Jam-packed episode of 8 Cubes today. I'm KMBest, he's Lambie Series. We're going to talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, which means we're going to talk about the 5 cards releasing next week, as well as reviewing Invisible Woman and Victoria Hand, the 2 dominant decks in the current metagame, as we approach Golden Gauntlet 3, which I will be commentating and Lambie will be playing in. We are going to start with Galactus First Steps, a 6/12. The first card it sees you play, whether that be because you blinked it onto the board or because you drew it, is his Herald. His Herald has a little Iron Patriot-like minigame. Nothing about the card you play changes. It doesn't transform into a new card called Galactus's Herald. It just is Galactus's Herald, and when it's winning its location, Galactus First Steps gets +2 power, whether he's on the board or in hand. So, you draw this guy, you play Quicksilver. Quicksilver is the Herald. As long as you're winning Quicksilver's location, Galactus First Steps is getting +2 power at the end of the turn. What do you think about this guy, Lambie?
For a Galactus card, I feel like the previous Galactus, they made him so overpowered and everyone hated him. They had to tone this one down so much. This is such a meh Galactus, by the way. It's like, okay, so you get +2 power with this guy, 614. I mean, 614 is not bad, but for the amount of it's literally just a 614, right? Like, you have to be winning the other location where his Herald is at as well for this to be a 614. So I'm not too high on this guy. I think it's just very.
You sure? Because
I'm not too high on
it's
this
working
guy.
in hand. It's going to be like a 616, a 618. It doesn't happen just one time. It's every end of turn.
Yeah, but this card has to be in your hand first, right?
Yes.
Like for that to compound. So the dream scenario is 618, right? But the thing is, that's the dream scenario, and you have to be winning all those other locations for this to be that. It's like many steps Red Hulk, I feel, because Red Hulk just. It's honestly really just like many steps straight Hulk, I feel like that, because that condition feels like it's a lot easier to do and less effort, right? The fact that you have to have this in your hand, if this gets increased in your deck, I think I see a case for it, but it doesn't, so.
I agree with the Red Hulk comparison, but I think that's an upside pitch for a card like this, because the Red Hulk comparison is Red Hulk, High Evo Hulk. These are cards that, and I think High Evo Hulk is a little bit closer because it's like a thing you have control over, that you are trying to get this repeated +2. To me, this card is High Evo Hulk that every deck can run, which not every deck is going to want to run a High Evo Hulk. But there are definitely decks that want to run High Evo Hulk. He was playable in the Fantasticar lists as recently as this month. Like, this is a card archetype that might not be the most exciting, it might not be the splashiest thing, but really big 6-drop has consistently been good in Marvel Snap. And I think there's one thing that really scares me about this card. It is that we are currently in a metagame with a really good 3-drop ramp card for Professor X. Because when these cards are typically good, it is almost always in concert with, I have already won a lane before this, right? 3/6 Luna Snow into Professor X is that's actually a pretty legit play line. I'm not saying it's like a super meta thing right now, but it is good. And that's the kind of thing that can support something like this. The downside is that, yes, he does want to be in your hand. And if he is in your hand and he is gaining this power the entire game, he's going to be a really big guy. But is that ever going to be better than Cannonball Mercury? Not entirely sure. Let's move on to Silver Surfer First Steps, a 3/4 with an ability that says if you are winning this location, Silver Surfer First Steps will copy the text of an on-reveal card at the location. To me, this looks like worse Prodigy. Now, I understand that it looks very exciting. I think a lot of that is because it reads like it's doing that every turn, because it's an end-of-turn ability. It's not, though, because once a card in Marvel Snap copies the text of another card, it has that text and not its own text. So this is a one-time copy. And I just don't know what the biggest upside play with that is. When I look at a card like Prodigy, I see Prodigy succeeding because it's copying things that are not on reveals. When I look at a card like Absorbing Man, I see Absorbing Man succeeding because it can copy stuff outside of the lane that original stuff is in, like a Brood, right? This card is not doing either of those things, which means that in order for it to succeed, I feel like it has to find some sort of specific defining interaction in the way that Absman is defined by the Brood interaction, or that Prodigy right now is defined by the Invisible Woman First Steps interaction. I just don't see what that is for this card. Is it Silver Surfer? Because I just don't find that particularly convincing.
Yeah, no, I agree with the whole is it Silver Surfer thing, because it's probably not. Because the thing about Surfer is that you kind of want to like plop it on the final turn, right? Like every time if you have to plop a Surfer down earlier beforehand, you're like kind of reducing the amount of things that it actually buffs anyway. So it's like you force yourself to play the early Surfer so you can play this later, that kind of thing, So it's like not really that good anyway. Also, I do agree that this is like worse Prodigy, right? And at the same time with the Absman comparison as well, because the thing about this kind of cards whereby you have to over-invest in one location, it kind of has to be absolutely game breaking for you to like over invest in one location. And this card, as of now, doesn't seem like it could do that. So I think it's just gonna be like an okay card. When it launches, it's gonna see play in Surfer decks and a few other places. But I don't think it's gonna like be meta shifting or warping on its own.
Yeah, I think that this card being the card in the Super Premium Season Pass will probably have people like get tricked into thinking it's better than it is, right? Like people will assume
expensive
that because
equals
it's there,
good.
yes, right? Like I actually do think that, and I think that'll happen both from people who bought it and from people who didn't buy it and are angry that they were not able to get it. I don't think this card is going to end up being very good though. Like I think this card is going to be lower even than Fantasticar, and Fantasticar right now is like, I think it's a fine card, but it's more like a pub stomper than like a high-end card right now, especially after Invisible Woman First Steps. But at least Fantasticar is like a card in a deck you can play at high levels. I don't really see this card being anything other than card 12 in Surfer, and there are so many cards that are card 12 in Surfer. There is one other interaction that I really do like with this card that I don't exactly know if it'll work, but playing Iron Patriot into this, like, I get it. It's a 2-3 into a 3-4. It's probably not going to work, but God, if that does work, it's like, it's so awesome to have multiple Iron Patriot triggers if you're able to pull it off. It just sort of requires maybe you always have to put your Iron Patriot somewhere that they did not put it. But it is a very powerful thing to do against decks that are sort of slow rolling what you're doing. And so if you're able to get multiple Iron Patriot triggers per game, I think that actually is quite powerful. I just don't know if Shalabal's body is big enough to facilitate that kind of play pattern. Moving on to Stardust, a 4/7 with an ongoing ability that prevents any card from entering any location that wasn't played at that location effectively. So the main targets for a card like this are things like Hela and Nimrod. This turns them off completely. This is sort of a Mobius style card, and those cards are always incredibly controversial because they typically end up hitting the low end of that stuff a lot harder than they hit the high end of that stuff. And I think that is a valid concern with this card, but I think ultimately when you really zoom out, people that are sort of doomsaying over what this card does need to step back and remember that in a lot of matchups in this game, you are playing the Thing. Not the Thing First Steps, just the Thing. If you're playing against a Victoria hand deck and you play this card, you have played the Thing. If you're playing against an Invisible Woman First Steps deck and you play this card, you have played the Thing. If you're playing against an Afflict deck and you have played this card, you have played the Thing, except it turns off a Malekith some of the time, depending on if you got it down before the Malekith. This is a card that I do not particularly see as overpowered, in large part because of it has the stat line of the Thing.
Yeah, I mean, this card has so little targets in the meta right now. I feel like not in the meta. I feel like in general it has so little targets, right? Like cards can't be added to location except by playing or moving them. So what are things that it could like? Because we talked about like how it's not gonna hit many things, right? Like what about stuff that it could potentially hit? Is it does it block Brood, right? Because Brood creates.
Yes, it
right?
does.
So
it blocks Brood. It blocks Mr. Sinister.
Blink?
It blocks Blink. Yes, those are
So
reasonable hits.
Reasonable hits that the funny thing is those decks like don't even need to like physically have to play those cards every game to win. That's the thing. So like so you don't even really need to physically play those cards to always win the game. And those are like the only really good targets right now. Outside of Hela, which is not like really a meta thing right now. So this card doesn't have targets. And 4/7, nice stat line, yes, but 4/7 is like baseline, right? Like if you're 4/7, you probably are just like a normal 4-drop at this point in time. So this is gonna end up being a normal 4-drop that does nothing much. For the most part of now at least. So yeah, I mean that's good, right? You don't have to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that like this is a card that its existence sort of makes the metagame more palatable a lot of the time. In much the same way as like we've had Mobius around and it hasn't killed Mr. Negative yet. The stuff that kills Mr. Negative is overwhelmingly like when decks are really popular that Gore is like not good against, right? Like that's usually like it takes that and Mobius being really playable in order to make that happen. But like we've had Mr. Negative influenced metagames, and suddenly we have this, and everyone thinks that, like, you know, Nimrod's going to disappear, Hell is going to disappear. And maybe that'll be true for a week, but only because it's for a week. And I think that there are a lot of genuinely powerful things that this card does hit, but not a lot of them are particularly popular or powerful right now. One we didn't name so far, though, I think this is worth pointing out, is Fenris Wolf, which is a very good card right now. I think like that might actually be the most meta relevant thing that it's actually going to hit. But I do think that like the one potential real downside of this card is that people are going to slap it into whatever like Sarah Tech deck they're going to play and then just like play a bunch of Sarah Tech, and that's not fun for anyone they play against. But by the same token, I don't really think it's super fun to play against Nimrod or Hela. And I also think that this card existing means that they're able to give more powerful tools to those decks such that they are a more interesting and varied play experience, and even more powerful, as we're going to see in the case of Redshift. Redshift is a 2/3 releasing in Series 4 at the beginning of the season. It discards a card on reveal, the leftmost card in your hand. It gives you, in return, another card that costs the same as that card. There is one card that sticks out as a potential Redshift card to me, and that card is Agatha Harkness, who is always the leftmost card in your hand, and can be very good to discard in a world where you're planning on Helaing her back, Ghost Ridering her back, or Black Knighting her into an Ebony Blade. Does any other interaction stick out for you when it comes to Redshift?
I think what I like about this card, so firstly, I want to say I think this is a good card, right? But like in general, what I like about this card is the fact that it's targeted discarding, right? Like the thing about targeted discarding is we don't have a lot of that in the game, which is why Blade is a good card in the deck that it's supposed to be good, right? And to a certain extent, Colleen Wing is a good card in the deck that she's supposed to be good in. So targeted discards are always very important because you have control. You have control over what's getting dropped from your hand, which is why people always favor these cards over things like Swordmaster and so like I really think that this card will definitely find a home in standard discard decks. And also, like you said, Agatha at this point I feel like Agatha is not really that much of a casino deck or like random deck. Like you literally build Agatha to do specific things, and it usually achieves it very consistently with the way you build it, So I feel like this could be one of those cards as well. Not generic, but it's like a 2/3, decent stats obviously for a 2-drop, and then it has the additional effect. I mean, the random card sometimes once in a while gets you something very playable or useful, but I guess that's not the real point here. The point is, to me, I like the fact that it's targeted discard on a low cost body.
I mean, it's like the greatest Hela card ever made, right? You play Agatha, which thins your deck, right? Just baseline thins your deck. You discard your Agatha, you're going to bring it back with a Hela. And you also get a 6, which means that, like, your Corvus has additional targets. One of the biggest issues that the deck can have is people play it wrong, right? Like people play Blades early and then Corvus, and it's like, no. You want your Corvus to have as many good hits as possible because you often want to protect at least one of those cards. Let's say you draw that Hela after playing the Blade, then you're suddenly like, okay, I am now very likely to discard the Hela if I play this Corvus. That kind of math is actually like a lot of what makes a good Hela player a good Hela player, and making sure your Corvus is less likely to discard your Hela by giving you another 6-drop for it to discard. That is probably a great thing to just have in the pool. Again, not necessarily just for Hela, because Agatha's already in there. You're going to revive one of the 6-drops anyway, but just so you don't discard your Hela if you draw it, that kind of stuff is going to win you games, I don't know, 14% of the time or whatever percentage of the time you immediately top deck Hela after that play line, it'll be relevant, right? And that kind of stuff is important to how that deck plays. And I also think that this is a card that we just saw in Grand Arena, how dangerous it can be to let people free roll Agatha Harkness. And this isn't as close to that as you might think, but it is still operating in a similar space. And I don't know exactly why they keep doing this, but every time they get close to the Agatha exploit, so to speak, it makes me wonder why it's still in the game, because, like, this is so clearly a for fun card that people are trying to turn into Old America Chavez, and the closer they get it to be Old America Chavez, the more annoying it seems that, like, this is a mechanic that exists in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I also want to circle back one bit to something we mentioned a bit earlier, which is the mention of good Hela player. Because like our last topic is about competitive Marvel Snap. So good Hela player, as comical as it sounds, actually it does exist, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about it's not difficult to be a good Hela player, but you kind of need to know about these kind of things. Like you need to know like what's the chance of you discarding this, what's the chance of you drawing said like Hela or like that kind of thing. Like it's all the little percentages. Like I think it's in every deck there is this, but in Hela I think it's one of the most obvious because like the littlest percentages, right? It's like the difference between discarding Hela being a 50% discard or 75% discard, or like how many cards left in your deck. The difference between drawing Hela is 50% or 75%. It really matters with your snaps and stuff like that. So just wanted to point that out that good Hela player, this term is like a real term. It's not like a meme. It actually is a thing that people can get better at, you know. But it's not difficult. It's just a thing that could happen.
It's card counting, right? It's once you acquire the skill or the mindset, it's just about plugging the numbers into your formula. But there are just a lot of people who don't think about it that way. And I think a lot of Marvel Snap, a lot of card games are sort of like that. But with Hela, it's very pronounced because so often in other card games, it's like, okay, well, if I draw this, then I do this, I can get a 50-50 if they have this and this and this. But with Hela, it removes a lot of the if they have this and this and this, because you know if you execute your game plan, it just wins, right? Like there's not really like a lot of them entering the equation. So you very much get to focus on it like you're counting cards at a blackjack table, where it's just like, these are the odds, I am playing the odds. I get to play mathematical or game theory optimal. And that's a lot of what being good at Hela is.
Correct.
Terrax the Tamer, a 3/3 that has a really cool design that looks like Darkseid from DC Comics, which is crazy because he's a 3/3 and just some random guy from the past. But Terrax the Tamer, 3/3 on reveal, it looks at all the locations. The ones that you're winning, you shuffle a rock into your opponent's deck. The ones that you're losing, you shuffle a rock into your deck.
Okay, so firstly, I love that you mentioned Darkseid because that was the first thing that I thought of. And I'm not a big like DC fan
exactly
per se,
like
but Darkseid is one of my favorite like villains in my childhood of all time. Like Darkseid, Apocalypse, and to a certain extent Galactus as well. But Darkseid, Apocalypse, and Galactus. Like I didn't even care about Thanos when I was a kid, by the way. I didn't even know who he was. But this is just sidetracking. But Darkseid, Galactus, and Apocalypse were like my guys on TV. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, so the effect of Terrax,
you got a real thing for like gray guys in power armor. Like Darkseid and Apocalypse might as well be the same guy. Galactus also has power armor.
That's true. But Apocalypse had the shifting thing, and Darkseid was just like Superman, impossible to beat you, that kind of thing. Okay, not impossible, but you get my point. But yeah, anyway, so the effect of this actual card, right? For each location, shuffle a rock into the losing player's deck. I know it's obviously a Darkhawk card. Let's not think of this as a disrupt my opponent's combo card, because you're not gonna play this in your deck just to make my opponent draw worse, so I play a 3/3. No, you're not gonna do that, man. We had discussions of this a long time ago about like mill being mill because it actually has stats, not because it disrupts for the most part. But yeah, so you're not gonna be playing this deck just to make your opponent draw this card just to make your opponent draw worse. You can probably play this in Darkhawk, but like honestly, Darkhawk now doesn't really need more support. It's a good deck as it is right now anyway. And 3/3 stat line doesn't make Darkhawk feel better. So I think this card's just gonna release and not see any play. That's my opinion.
Okay, so like first of all, I agree it's not very good, but here's my cope case for this card.
Okay. New players.
Rockslide is too good to be a 3/3 right now. This is the closest we're going to get to 3/3 Rockslide. 4/5 Rockslide, I've played Darkhawk decks right now. And granted, in order to be a Darkhawk deck, you have to be like a Merlin, Hood, Misery, Werewolf, Shadow King deck, Juggernaut deck. I get it, right? It's like barely a Darkhawk deck. Darkhawk is like the C plan in the deck. I totally understand. But I hated that Rockslide cost 4. I hated it so much.
Uh,
And this guy is a cheaper guy who can put rocks into your opponent's deck for less, and also is a wolf trigger, and also as a 3/3 you evolve it into a 4, and its effect is already happened, and 3 to 4 is a great jump, and you can actually get it on the freaking board, unlike a 4/5, which you are never. I was never playing Rock Slide in that deck. So like I agree, this is worse than 3/3 Rock Slide by a lot. However, it costs 3, and that feels like it is so impactful to me. Now, granted, I don't think that deck is very good right now. I think it got a lot worse after Invisible Woman came out because it just gets your Darkhawk stack checked by a Havoc. And if you're like, it's just like, why am I bothering with this Darkhawk stuff at all if it is going to be 13 power and their Havoc is going to be 16 power? I get it. But it was good before that happened. I strongly believe that, and I would have played this card in there over Rock Slide because Rock Slide is so completely unplayable at 4 cost. I mean, so let's talk about her. Invisible Woman, First Steps. This is a review that I've rarely had to give, honestly. Like, this is a card that I consider a core piece of one of the better decks in the game, and it is Invisible Woman, First Steps, 3/5, activate, repeat your... I have to get the wording correct because the wording is incredibly precise here. Your end of game or end of turn abilities happen twice. And the reason this card is ridiculous is because if you copy it, they actually happen 4 times. And the math still doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I got a lot of comments about like why it does or doesn't make sense, but fundamentally, here's how the math works. If you have 0 Invisible Woman First Steps, your end of turn abilities happen the normal 1 time. If you have 1 Invisible Woman First Steps, your end of turn abilities happen 1 additional time, so 2 total times. If you have 2 Invisible Woman First Steps, your end of turn abilities happen 3 additional times, so 4 total times. If you have 3 Invisible Woman First Steps, your end of turn abilities happen...
Game.
Well, yeah, but like your end of turn abilities happen 6 additional times, or 5 additional times, 6 total times. Interaction to note here, by the way, Havoc, this is one that I think people probably just don't know. Havoc will not eat if there is no energy left. So if you have like 2 Havocs, you are going to have to think about like how many times am I activating Invisible Woman First Steps? Because if you have 3 Invisible Woman First Steps, 1 Havoc will eat all 6 energy and the other one will not. So if you have 4 triggers of Invisible Woman First Steps, not 4 triggers of end of turn, I should say. So 2 Invisible Woman First Steps, you'll have a 16 power Havoc and an 8 power Havoc. This comes up a shocking amount, and people, even good players, are often confused by it. Long story short, Invisible Woman First Steps and Prodigy, Invisible Woman First Steps and Frigga, Invisible Woman First Steps and Moon Girl, you're going to see a lot of that, and it's a very powerful thing to be doing. I don't think it's, like, unbeatable or even, like, overpowered. I think there are plenty of bad spaces to do it in. I think the Fantastic Art stuff is significantly worse than copying it, but this card is good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this guy is good. Like you look at what it has done so far. It's a lot of points. Like to be frank, it's a lot of points. The thing that hasn't happened much is the Doom stuff, right? Like the Doom 2099, the one we thought would be the simplest way to winning games at any level, never happened. So it's very interesting because I guess it just goes wide and then not tall enough as well, you know. So that could be the reason why. But I was a bit surprised that like it's. Like not, I would say it's non-existent, but it's like not successful. So I'll be surprised. I'm pretty sure people tried it. It's just that I was quite surprised that it didn't work out at all. But yeah, so IW is a really good card right now. Like personally, I mean, I want to talk a bit about the other IW, which even though it's a extremely different card, I totally had no interest in the IW just because the way it played, it was very like. It's a bit more reactive in a sense. Like it's very tech cardy, you know. Whereas this IW is very proactive. You're like trying to build boards, build stats, compound effects, you know. So it's just personally the way I like to play my Marvel Snap, and I think this card does that as well. Yeah, this card's really strong. Is it a potential nerf target? Yes, but it's fine now, isn't it? Like I think it's still fine though. Like it's not like it has to go now. What do you think, Cam?
I think that I personally, if I were Glenn Jones, what I would do is I would change how that multiplicative things work in Marvel Snap. Because I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, this makes perfect sense. Why would it work any other way? And I think a lot of people look at it like that because they weren't here when it did work another way. But like the way multiplications work in Marvel Snap is actually something that they specifically coded in an attempt to nerf copies of Wong and copies of Onslaught in the beta. Like, that was an explicit thing that they did on purpose. The reason they work like this is because of a balanced decision, right? This is not like the way things have to be. And I think that it is a confusing implementation of how multipliers should work in a game like this. And I would try to make it a little more intuitive. Either adding one additional, changing her wording to say happen an additional time. I think that would be like, oh no, my 16 power Havoc is 12 power. God, I better delete this deck. Like, it's so terrible. I played a 2 energy Hulk. Oh, I'm never going to play again. Like, I think you could do that and get away with it, right? I think that's like the one that sticks out. You could also just take a point of power off of her, make her a 3/4 instead of a 3/5. I mean, I think that's fine. I think that's a totally viable approach to this. I just sort of think that you probably don't want to do both, right? At 3/4, one additional, I don't know if this card is exciting or good. I think you have to choose one of those things to do. And I think that if you do that second one, you sort of close off the opportunity to ever do the first one unless you make sure that your policy is to revert it in the case of doing the first one. So I personally would probably change her a little bit, but it's largely just because of how confusing she is and not down to like, wow, this is busted. Yep. I will say that it does seem like the kind of deck that's probably pretty easy to play. So it might be a little too good lower down, and that's where the meat of the population is. So maybe they just nerf it because of that. But my gut right now, like it's good, but I don't think it's that good.
Yeah, it's a fine, good card. Like I'm fine with this thing exactly as it is, which is why I brought up the topic of like, do we really think this needs nerf? I think no. But if it were to get nerfed, I can bet money that SD will just do the -1 point first. They love doing it, man. They love doing the let's -1 point of power and see where the meta takes. So I think if anything happens, if anything were to happen, I guess -1 point will happen first, and then they'll see.
I will say this. I do think that the combination of IW and V-Hand is probably the best deck I've played this season. Probably the best deck in the game right now. I think it is really, really good. I think that there is upward potential for this Invisible Woman package as people start fusing it with other stuff. And a lot of the reason that I'm not super high on it right now is because people have been playing it in fairly mediocre shells, right? Like you like the high Evo Fantastic R stuff or like Human Torch First Steps. And it's like, that's fine, but like your card quality is pretty minimal if you're playing Black Cat. You know what I mean? Like there's just a cap on what you can do. And I think that the V-Hand stuff is ridiculously strong. I was really impressed with that. It might end up being tomorrow's video. I'm not entirely sure. And so with that in mind, I do think that it is absolutely a nerf target in the same way any deck that I would call the best deck in the game is a nerf target. But I don't necessarily think that it's like a holy crap broken card when you really dig into it. It's just quite good. And what makes it broken, quote unquote, is that it's a combo end game that can fuse onto mid-range decks. And in certain contexts, that's an incredibly powerful thing to do right now. And we are definitely in a context that is maximizing that power. One thing I am pretty sure about is that the best deck in the game probably involves Victoria Hand. It's either the full tech Victoria Hand deck, which is, of course, doing all the stuff everyone is familiar with as just elite cards. We have, of course, Misery and, of course, Frigga, and, of course, the Hood, and, of course, Victoria Hand, and, of course, you know, there's a Juggernaut in there, there's a Shadow King in there. You know what this deck looks like. It's been around for a while. But as they've started to tune down what we would call tech slop or buff slop or however you want to look at it, they have increased the ability for this to be the dominant point package that gets fused with the tech and the interactive cards. So right now, V-Hand is probably the best point package in the game because they nerfed Galacta, they nerfed Gwenpool, they nerfed Galacta again, they nerfed Zabu. It was previously that. Now we're looking at V-Hand as the sort of home for cards that are good at points and tech cards that are good at interacting. And I think that there has been this sort of massive uprising against what people call tech slop. And I don't really know how to phrase it, but stop touching me is not a viable way of designing card games. Players need to be able to interact with you. It's just how it is. And I think largely I see people who are like, stop kicking my sandcastle. please stop interacting with me. And then when you zoom out, you see what their sandcastle is, and it's an even larger foot ready to kick someone else, right? Like, player playing Living Tribunal saying, stop kicking my sandcastle. No, because if I don't kick your sandcastle, I don't play the game. Like your sandcastle is so much bigger than my sandcastle that if I don't interact with it, I lose straight up. And so I think that has to be respected when we talk about the role of tech in any metagame. And this is definitely the tech deck of the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it fits tech so nicely as well, right? Like, the thing is, a lot of your powerhouse plays are actually very low cost, Like, a lot of them, like, you fit tech so easily just because, like, your power cards don't cost a lot. You can fit many things in the final turn, which is really, really important. One thing I want to talk about V-Hand, which I guess rejoice the Victoria Hand lovers. When I came back to try hard Golden Gauntlet 1 and 2, this was the one deck that I really wanted to spend a lot of time on, but I didn't think it was worth it back then because Thanos. I mean, come on. It was GG1, GG2 was Thanos, right? So I didn't really get much time to spend sciencing this deck. But then now this deck has the time to shine. So rejoice, V-Hand lovers. You're the premium tech and points deck right now, which is great. I'm probably going to spend quite a bit of time sciencing this deck as well. But yeah, no, I do think that the whole kicking your sandcastle thing is very... I would say interesting. It's just never going to be solved, right? Because like you said, Living Tribunal players saying don't Enchantress me is like saying just let me put 400 power on the board for free. It's like, bro, come on.
Bro, I have to kick your sandcastle or it'll suffocate me. What are we doing here? Like,
yes.
Like, I do think that, like, I'm personally very sympathetic to the idea that, like, what if we just took a power off of all of these cards? I've been pitching that since the beta. I was like, in the beta, I was like, we have to nerf Cosmo. Like, that's the kind of person that I am. We have to nerf Cosmo, we take a point off of Killmonger, we take a point off of Cosmo. Like, that's what I was talking about back in the beta. Like, I've been there. I get it. I just think that, like, the idea that it's a fundamental problem is a little overblown. The idea that these cards could all lose a point of power, I'm super with it. If you let me pitch a balance patch, I would be taking a point of power off of Killmonger, everything. Cosmo, Mr. Fantastic, Surge. I would take a point of power off so much stuff right now. Like, I would absolutely do it. While we're on the topic of V-Hand, though, I do have one complaint, and it's a flavor complaint. They should swap Victoria Hand and Nick Fury. Just totally. Because I think it would be super cool if Nick Fury was the busted meta card and Victoria Hand, who I've never heard of because I didn't read Dark Reign until after I played this game, was the card that did mediocre stuff. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, till now, because I didn't read Dark Reign, I didn't even know what Dark Reign was. I still don't know who Victoria Hand is, except for the Marvel Snap card, so I'm down.
Golden Gauntlet 3, or I'm not even sure how to refer to it. It's the Golden Gauntlet World Championship circuit. There are going to be 3 tournaments.
1, I think.
Yes. Yeah. There are going to be 3 tournaments that fire into the Golden Gauntlet World Championship. There are each aimed at different time zones. So the first one is actually the one that's aimed at Asia. So this is the Lambie tournament, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And I know this because I'm commentating it, and it looks like it'll end at like 5 a.m. my time. So I'm going to have a wonderful time. I'm not even like, I can't even complain about that. That's just like normally when I'm streaming. That's just like my actual sleep schedule does facilitate this. But what are you thinking in terms of prep and how you're going to approach Golden Gauntlet 3?
Okay, so firstly, this is good. Okay, firstly, time zone wise is good for me because it ends before dinner for me. So very healthy human sleeping schedule. That's for one. I was thinking, like, yeah, I definitely wanted to play this one because this was the one which has the most healthy schedule for me as an Asian player. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna be playing. Prep wise, I think gonna do very similar to what I did previously in GG1 and 2 as well, which is obviously you need to study. The thing about a lot of people that take this game semi-seriously competitively is you are very like good at choosing your deck, but you also kind of need to know your opponent's deck very well as well. Like you need to know the mirror match, you need to know the like what are potential brings that people can play and how you can play your deck into those. Like it's not just about knowing your deck, it's about knowing every meta deck. So if you're really prepping for this tournament and intend to win, you actually need to take time to play decks that you have zero intention of bringing, which is very important, by the way. It's like people think like, oh, it's a bit of a waste of time. Like, why am I playing decks that I will never bring? That's because your opponent will bring them and you need to know how to beat them. So one thing I've learned is that the best way to know your enemy is to know, I don't know what the phrase is, but like know your enemy well so you can like beat them or something like that. That was that's my pitch. So play every meta deck. And at the same time, obviously, one thing I overlooked previously in Golden Gauntlet 1 and 2 is that like I think the ability for people to bring surprise tech is very prevalent in Golden Gauntlet. I mean, like, it's obviously open deck list, but at the same time, there might be like a tech that like sprouts up like 24 hours before the tournament, and then people like hop on it and just like it appears in like 10% more decks than you expected. So I feel like the days leading up to Golden Gauntlet, you need to be very actively looking at like socials, Twitch streamers, and all that kind of thing. Like, it's obviously a lot of additional homework, but like if something sprouts up and it's actually that good and you're not aware, then you're gonna be shortchanging yourself. So it's like just keeping yourself open to news during the days before the Golden Gauntlet is, I think, very important.
And I mean, there's going to be a lot to figure out because the tournament is only a few days away. And as far as I'm aware, all the cards that we talked about in this episode, you can bring them, and there are a lot of them. And so you're going to have to be really on top of, are these new cards changing the meta? Or alternatively, just assume they won't and then bring some Invisible Woman or V-Hand pile.
Yeah.
Like, just assume that none of this matters and just be like, I'm playing Invisible Woman V-Hand. And frankly, the only thing I can think of is that, like, if you are playing a deck in this field, I would assume that there are going to be less things that lose to less Hellas, less Nimrods. You know what I mean? Because Stardust just came out. Like, that would be the one assumption I would feel safe making. But I almost feel like that would mean that you should be bringing Hella and Nimrod because everyone's going to be like, I don't know, someone else will play Stardust. It is interesting. The cards that I find most interesting in tournament fields are the Stardusts and the Mobiuses, and the influence they have on what people feel like they're allowed to bring. Because a ton of people brought Mobius in Golden Gauntlet 1. Nobody played Mr. Negative, but it was very relevant in Thanos mirrors, right? And so you had, like, I don't think Stardust can do the same thing. There aren't going to be, like, mirrors of a deck where Stardust is really impactful, unless that deck is, like, a Brood deck, maybe?
I mean, essentially, what I think you're trying to say, and what I also want to, like, remind people on is that it's fine to bring rogue, less consistent decks in tournaments as well, because surprise factor and like the opponent's lack of practice versus that deck is not going to be a real factor. But you wouldn't want to bring a rogue deck that is not the rogue card, but like rogue as in like not common deck, or you don't want to bring a rogue deck that is gonna get hit by splash damage from popular tech, right? Like if you bring Mr. Negative back then, everyone has Mobius. Even if they were obviously not trying to counter Mr. Negative, they just kind of do because the Mobius is in the deck. So you want to be careful about that. Like, just make sure you know what's popular tech. So if you want to bring special decks, don't make sure your special deck doesn't like accidentally lose to what people are trying to just counter in general anyway.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, I have been KMBest. He's been Lambie Series, and he's about to take us out and then go win Golden Gauntlet 3.
Hey, I will try my best. All right, but like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for everyone being here. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.